My name is Andrew Stotts, and I want to welcome you to Careers in Finance. This is a program where I meet with people to discuss their careers in finance. In particular, I had a very happy career in finance. It was great, surrounded by great people. Yeah, I had my tough times, but generally, I did the work that I love with the people I enjoyed working with. And that's what I want for you. My hope is that you can find that space for you to be successful in the world of finance. Today's guest is a special guest of mine. She's a graduate of Valuation Masterclass Bootcamp. And really, it was such a great time getting to know her and watching her career trajectory. So I think you're going to enjoy this, and hopefully you'll have some questions as we go through. Remember, you can ask any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. So let's kick it off. I'm going to bring in Annapurna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andrew. Really appreciate the warm welcome.
Yeah,
Yep. So
it's great to have you. And I think let's first thing is let's just kick off by talking about what you're doing right now.
sure. So currently, I am working in strategy consulting and investment banking. So expanded slightly beyond the finance, and it's been very exciting so far. So just to give you a little bit of context and to share with you my background. So previously, I'd started out in equity research, and that was very exciting. That's where my interest in valuation developed, and that's where I wanted to reach out and take your class because I wanted to deepen my understanding of valuations. And it was really such a great experience, being in your class and getting to experience and understand valuations better with the whole, set of classmates who are from all over the world. And from that experience, I was able to move into the next, part of the phase, which is now in investment banking and consulting.
So I'm curious, like what was missing, or like when you were building your career from the beginning, and some things you enjoyed, some things you didn't. There was something missing that had you searching. What more do I want to learn? What more do I want to do? What was missing?
I think sometimes what's missing is the right, I think guidance that you sometimes require.
Mhm.
And I remember in your class, every time I would try to convey the point that I'm very excited about valuations and I love researching companies. You would keep coming back to the point that really think about what you really enjoy doing and understanding the purpose of it, because it's really a long race, right? It's not a short term thing that you focus on. So you really have to enjoy what you do as well. And that really got me thinking and reflecting. And I think, in a sense, I'm very grateful and happy that I have found a career path that I really enjoy. Um,
Hmm.
I truly do.
So tell us a little bit about what you enjoy. Like, what are the things about your job? And maybe, for someone that's listening, I want to welcome some of our guests on. Of course, there's Alex is listening in. There's Alex, and also we have Ashwin, also a valuation masterclass professional graduate, and also we have Zishan Ali, who is also a graduate of professional. And we have Nong A, also good morning. And we have Joe Fitter. Joe, good to see you. I am well. Good to see you. And for everybody listening in, let's just take a step back and say, what is your job? Because I mean, like, I talk in the Valuation Masterclass Bootcamp, like as a sell side analyst, I tell a little bit about what a fund manager is, but I don't go into too much detail on other things. So maybe, what is your job? What does it entail, so that people listening could think, is that something I want to do?
Sure. So I think what's exciting, to answer your previous question, what's exciting about the job is, to really be able to look at different companies, different projects, and I find that very exciting because you're working on certain projects for short periods of time, and you really get to see different challenges. So to give you an example, on the investment banking side, there could be clients who are looking to raise funds, and it's to help them shape their story, and to help them understand better what are the sources of finance that they should be looking at, and helping them connect to the right set of investors. And this has been a new journey for me because I haven't had experience in this previously, but I found it very exciting because you again get to work on the research side, and there's quite a bit of BD skills that you need here as well, and building that network of investors to be able to connect both parties, and be able to witness these meetings. So that's more on the investment banking side. I would say on strategy consulting, there could be. So far, I've had instances where, let's say, there are companies who are interested in entering India, and they're looking at market entry strategy report, for example, to really understand what are the regions that they should be looking at in order to enter, what should be the strategy that they take on. And you're really kind of helping them, understand that better, and shaping that in the form of a report. And I've also had some experience so far working on the on public sector advisory as well,
Mm,
which is kind of different from finance. But I think what's really interesting once again is having a new set of challenges, being on a project that you might not know much about, but you have to pick up your understanding about the sector very quickly, and so you're not really to be able to be hands-on and to be working with people who've been in the sector for decades. I think that's quite challenging to come into the room and have that level of understanding, which you probably wouldn't, but do your best to understand all of that very quickly. So I think both on the consulting side and on the investment banking side, it's very exciting that I get to dabble in a little bit of both. um,
mm.
yeah.
And when we compare that to, let's say, the sell side, as I'm familiar with, you know, you're kind of an adversary on the sell side. You're not on the side of management. You want to get to know management. You want to, and you may like their story and like their company, but ultimately you're an objective, person. And so, um, but the difference between the work that you're doing on advisory consulting and that type of stuff is that you're over the wall, you're with the client, and you're developing that relationship. That relationship is very different on the sell side. And I think that can help people who are thinking about what career they want. Because in my case, I didn't have a desire to advise the management. I wanted to analyze the business, and I wanted to understand the business and look at it from an objective perspective. But I definitely see that there's some people in their nature, they want to be working with the management. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about what that's like, or that difference is like.
No, definitely, Andrew, and I agree with you there. I think to get to understand a client and their requirements, you really put yourself in their shoes. Is again, you've probably not built a business in that space yourself, but to really understand from an objective point of view, and to help them guide them in an objective manner in terms of what their strategy should be. I think it's sort of a daunting task, so to speak. But really, I think a lot of times people get a little bit, um, even I think entrepreneurs or founders, in their own head when it comes to their own business. And I remember one of the classes that I'd taken with you, where we was studying some of the strategy books. To really have that objectivity and to come in with a different perspective, or can really add value to an organization, and to be able to see those smaller things. So for me, again, it is, I think, tricky to navigate that space, because how do you really come in and tell someone that you've been running this business for decades now, and this is how you should be making changes, so on and so forth. But I think that's what makes it exciting as well for me, really.
Speaking of that, there's the book right there that I use a lot, Understanding Michael Porter, for the viewers and listeners out there. What a great book. One of the things I was thinking about now, there's a part of my business I do called Profit Boot Camp and Outsource CFO. And in the Profit Boot Camp, what we try to do is help mid-sized family businesses double their profits in 12 months. It's a very clear and direct message, and we focus everybody in on that objective. But what's so fascinating that I think, the value that an advisor or consultant can add is that they're seeing other businesses. They're seeing other industries. They got other colleagues around the world or around the region that have seen these types of situations, and they can come up with some things pretty quickly that can add value. For instance, just to give an example, I had two clients, and I, in my initial discussions with them, um, one of them talked a lot about the strength of their management team and the people involved. I wouldn't say that their management team was that much better than any other, but they talked about that. The other one talked about how bad the management team, or let's say the employees, were. Like, I just don't know if we can, upgrade because employees and employees and employees. And so as an advisor, eventually I said, I'm not saying right or wrong here, but I'm just saying this is an observation that I've made, and this is how you've responded to this discussion. And that was really helpful for the client to think, oh, okay. So I'm just curious, like, from your perspective, what you've seen in your own situation and in your own business. What's that value that you can add as an outsider?
Mm, absolutely agreed, Andrew. I think, again, it comes back to sometimes holding your ground, again, as you said, to be able to benchmark and coming in as an outsider, there are advantages to it to be able to compare to other companies or other instances. And I think, again, to be able to stand your ground and really make the client understand your point of view. And I really think that if you're able to address the problem, that there's a reason why they brought you in the first place, and if you're able to address that and help them find solutions that could be something that they've not looked at in the past, or I think and to give strong rationale for that can really help someone, I think.
Mm. I just want to take a moment to first of all, to mention about that the Careers in Finance is brought to you by Valuation Masterclass Bootcamp, and you can get $100 extra off with the coupon codes LIVE or Student Live. If you're watching this live, just scan the QR code or go to valuationmasterclass.com/bootcamp. The other thing I just wanted to do is mention to anybody who's listening and those that are making comments, feel free to ask any questions as we go through this. Um, so let's talk a little bit more about what do you think for a young person that's trying to break into the world of finance? Do they need, like, I noticed that there's a lot of certifications. We've got the boot camp, there's CFA, there's so many. I noticed a lot of people had the FMVA or something like that from Corporate Finance Institute. And I'm just curious, like, and also you studied a lot. You did a lot of study. Like, what's your advice now after seeing all this about, and you don't have to recommend the Valuation Masterclass Bootcamp. I'll recommend that. But anyways, go ahead. Tell us, like, where do they just get out of university and get a job? What is the thing to do?
Um, so I think, Andrew, everyone's journey is very, very, very different. I ended up taking a lot of courses, and that helped me get more clarity. I remember, I think in my master's program, I had started learning finance, and that's where my interest really started out. And I went into CFA, and I think my exposure to equity research was where my interest and longing to understand valuations better came about. So I think it was really, it just happened to be that way for myself. I think for anyone wanting to start out their career in finance, I remember, I think when I wanted to start out, it just seems so daunting because you have so many different
Mhm.
kinds of roles. And sometimes you want to get a role for because um, for maybe reasons that you don't, for maybe money or for, but you don't really understand what the role entails. So I think as a young professional, really to try to understand what are these different types of roles and trying to see what is a good fit, and to really just get experience is a good place to start. I remember, I think I wouldn't have understood if I did not start out in equity research
Mm,
that I enjoyed research, but I was looking for something more client oriented as well. And I think when you do these experiences or take on more work experiences, when you understand more about yourself and what you enjoy doing, what you don't.
mm. And how do you look at your future? I'm just curious, like, what do you is your future clear, or do you still feel like, well, there's, I could go this way, I could go that way. Here's what I'm learning about myself. Like, how are you developing in your own personal development?
No, absolutely. I think when I had started out in my career in finance, I actually wanted to get into investment banking on day one. And I think now that I am in this space, and I'm very fortunate that my firm dabbles in a little bit of consulting and investment banking both. And currently I'm working on the public sector advisory side. And I think, I thought I was clear in terms of what I want to do in the future, but I'm really enjoying these different kinds of projects at this point, and I think I'm very grateful that I get this level of exposure to really make a decision going forward what I would like to focus on. But of course, I think as you progress in your career, you ought to specialize. Um, but I am, of course, focusing on specializing on my finance knowledge by taking more courses in finance.
And it's interesting to think about, why is understanding valuation important in consulting or advisory? Because you would think that's not about valuation, but what benefits do you get yourself from understanding more about how valuation's done?
Again, it comes down to, I think, understanding the company better, right? I think to be able to understand the financials, to be able to understand what the value of the company is, I think it all sort of ties in at the end of the day. And valuations is such a critical topic, so to speak, in most of the finance roles. Um, so for me, I was very excited when I took on your class, because you taught us more about benchmarking and how it's so important to look at international standards, and not just be focusing on the company in that local area.
Mm. And I'm curious, like, what advice you would also give about pursuing a job. Last night I was talking to students in the boot camp about how the eighth step in my 8 steps to become a number one analyst is I went to work for the number one broker. And it really elevated me. And I thought in the discussion last night, and I said, maybe I should have gone after that earlier. Like, what was holding me back? I did interview at Goldman Sachs many, many years ago, and I thought that would be great. But I went through like 17 different interviews until they rejected me. I'm just not a company man. So I kind of realized it as I went through all those. But I'm just curious, like, now, based upon where you're at now, and as you look back, how important is it to set your sights higher, than you may think initially?
Um, Thank you, Andrew. And I think I've also had a similar journey, maybe in terms of finding the right job for myself. I think it's also about really, really persevering and believing in yourself. If there's a kind of job that you really think you would like to do or you're cut out to do, I've had to face a lot of no's as well. But I think what kept me going was, sort of redetermining that, this is what I really want to get experience in, and I would like to, because I think the journey that I had was also kind of unconventional in the sense that didn't have prior IP experience. And India is a very competitive place when it comes to jobs. So, I would keep getting the same questions over and over again. You don't have IB experience. We don't think you're the right fit. So I think sometimes it's also a matter of there's a small element of a luck as well, I would say. But I think what's critical is to do as much as you can that's in your hand in terms of polishing on yourself, in terms of your skill sets, in terms of really going out there and talking to as many people as you can. And I remember doing that actively, reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and it's beautiful. You really, if you know how to just get people's attention, people are really out there to help you, right? People have built up their careers and they want to share their guidance. If you
It's
reach out,
amazing.
yeah. So I think all of those interesting conversations, it was, all of that difficult phase. Now that I look back, it was so interesting because that forced me to get out of my shell, talk to more people, really understand what's out there, and not look at it more from a superficial point of view, but to really understand what do you do, what made you more successful, what are your suggestions for me. Sometimes it's not always people don't always know what's right for you, but to be able to pick that out and make that's on you to have your own wisdom to understand what's right for you. But all of these conversations, I really enjoyed those.
I just want to reiterate that. In fact, I had a group of interns a while back, and I said, "Look, I want you to go on your LinkedIn, and I want you to reach out to CEOs and hiring managers or whatever, and I want you to just here's a message that I want you to send, which is I'm a student doing an internship, with Andrew Stotz, and I just had a couple questions, and I wonder if you could spare the time to answer it." It's remarkable how many people, I was behind the scenes watching them send out. And then it's remarkable the number of people that say, oh, yeah, here's a couple minutes that they gave and gave some feedback.
Yeah,
So, one of the advantages you have as a student or as a young person is you can reach out in that way. If you're 40 or 50 and you're trying to reach out in that way, it's a little bit harder. You got to find your angle and all that. But just to say, I'm a student and I need some advice or ideas or something like that, I think everybody listening would be surprised when you see how many people will positively respond. It's incredible.
absolutely.
We did get speaking of how competitive it is in India, we did have a question from Ali, who says, coming into your current role in IB and consulting, which one of your past experiences do you feel directly prepared you the most?
Um, I think in my case, so I've had two experiences in the past, and somehow I think both experiences have kind of helped me prepare for this role. My first experience being in equity research, which was purely focused on research, especially because I was an associate to an analyst. Um, so that definitely prepared me in terms of introduced me to this world of valuations and understanding companies and really going deep into understanding them. And I think the second role that prepared me was my second role that I took on was more BD oriented. In fact, purely BD oriented in the fintech space. Now, I think a lot of people at that time, I remember, who looked at my CV and said, "Whoa, you've taken some, bold moves, and this doesn't really make sense, so to speak." Um, but now that I look back in my journey, it really does make sense, and I think that prepared me. Now that when I'm on the client-facing side and I have to do the research bit as well, I get to that really helped me get out of my shell again and be able to talk to clients directly, and that people are comfortable putting me so early on in front of clients. So maybe it's a bit of my individual journey, but to be able to appreciate that you do pick up on skill sets, wherever you're at. That's been my experience at least.
Mm. You made me think I'm such a smart ass these days that if somebody said, oh, well, your experience isn't, da 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 da, I would reply, oh, so you're like traditional in the box, can't think outside of the box manager or company. So, but I think you missed something, and that is that maybe even before your work experience, you had an inquisitive mindset and engaging, you know, personality. And I can say that, having had a lot of students in the valuation masterclass boot camp and, students for many years, um, not that many are engaging. And teachers welcome engagement, like we love it, but the students don't do it. Very few do. Now in Thailand, we have something called Greng Jai, where people feel like they don't want to bother the teacher or the important person or something. So there's that, and I can understand. But the fact is that, you know, I'll tell you an interesting story is that just an hour ago, I was presenting to a finance class in America at Cal State Long Beach, where I graduated 30 some years ago in 1989. And the professor, it was his last, the finance professor that invited me to speak, it was his last class before he retired. And he was my finance professor back in 1988 and 89. And I engaged with him at that time. He gave me some sort of internship and some, I can barely remember that he got me involved in something which turned me on to finance and got me interested, Dr. Stephen Lee. And then to be able to maintain that. And so what I want to also add is the engaging personality, the person, be the person who's listening to other people, asking questions, wanting to learn.
Yeah.
And if you're that person, the opportunities are going to come. What has been your experience with that? I think you missed something, and that's, your engagement, your desire. I think when I think back to the boot camp days, you were engaged in those lessons. You were engaged in the discussions, and not everybody was. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that from a personality or experience perspective.
Thank you, Andrew. And yes, I think to disturb people. I mean, I think it's so important to like put yourself out there and to show that you're interested or passionate, or because not always that you are. And if you are enjoying something, to give that feedback, whether it's to a teacher or whether it's asking to your boss or reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I think you're probably right that I've always been inquisitive and I've wanted to ask questions, but I think I was actually a very shy child growing up, and I remember I used to think in my classes, I need to speak, I need to engage, I need to do it. I'm going to push myself, and because I had this experience where I was suddenly moved to an international school in a different country, and I remember being, kind of afraid seeing people from 72 nationalities. And it was very overwhelming. And I used to think at that time that, okay, I've been put in a difficult situation, but I need to speak, I need to communicate, and it's important to push myself. So I think even now that applies to this date, when I have clients maybe on the other end who have, decades of experience, and to not keep your mouth shut, but to open and like really talk and convey. And if you don't understand something, no question is a bad question. And I think in your class, I genuinely did have such a blast, and I wanted to convey that, and I enjoyed engaging.
Yeah, there's another Ashwin, one of the guys that was on this video. He also, he always had his notebook on his video, and he's like, and you could just see him. He was always writing down, and I was like, man, that guy is trying to get as much out of this as he can. We got a question from Ali that says, which deal is the most memorable, or which experience, let's say, in your experience is most memorable?
Um, I think for myself, currently I'm very deeply engaged in the public sector advisory project, and it's to do with the central government. So it's a whole new arena.
That's overwhelming.
It is. It really is, because I think people on the public sector side or the government side have very different kinds of clients as opposed to private ones. So for me, I think this is really standing out. Again, to be able to walk in and see people who've been in the system for 40, 50 years, and to tell them that, oh, I think this is what you should be doing. I don't know. It's been exciting.
All right, you kid, get out of here. That's the way that sometimes they react, but sometimes they don't. So also Adit says, thanks to both of you for putting your thoughts out there. You are welcome. That's part of the purpose of careers in finance. One other question, maybe you can describe how you found your job, your latest job.
Sure, of course. Um, so I had taken the valuation masterclass, and it was 6 weeks of really intense, stuff. And I was at my previous company at that point, and But what I was excited about was that Andrew really wanted to, help. I mean, I think in whether it was in terms of discussions, and really, really enjoyed that whole process. And I remember mentioning that at the end of the course, if you're looking to, if you have some companies in mind or someone that you want to reach out to let you know. So it was actually via you that I was able to land my current job. So thank you so much, Dr. Andrew. I'm really, really so grateful.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to AWR Lloyd, who was a sponsor of the boot camp, and that's part of what we're trying to do is not only learn valuation, but learn it with the purpose of how do I accelerate my career? Because ultimately, what I love is the idea of helping people, you know, change their lives and change their families' lives. And we have students, I think about one of the students from Nigeria, Rashid, who was one of our first students. And, he didn't have a computer at the time. He tried to attend through mobile phone, but of course doesn't have the resources sometimes. In Nigeria, the universities were on strike. So he had to go to the university and ask his professor if he could use his computer to do the assignments in the valuation masterclass boot camp. But he was always on the top and he was always caught up on his assignments. And I just think that, and now his dream was to get a job at Bank of America. And he sent me a message, and I don't know, it's 4 months ago, 5 months ago, saying, I got an internship with them. And then a couple of weeks ago, he sent me a message and said they hired me.
Wow.
That's, and that's the whole point too about, somebody asked me in my last, when I was talking to the students, they asked, why do you teach finance? Why don't you just work in finance? And really it's that, seeing people make their journeys and seeing their development, contributing to that, that's a great feeling. And that's part of the reason why people do respond when you reach out, to them. And just to say hi to Rajendra, who's in Nepal, I believe, right? And also Santosh, good evening. Yes, it's getting, we're far from evening here, but yes, where you are, it probably is. What I would like to do is just wrap up by you maybe sharing some of your, advice or words of wisdom, some of the lessons that you've learned, maybe a couple of things that we can wrap this up with. And then after that, we'll end the show and then you and I'll talk for a couple minutes. So,
Sure, absolutely. So I think my advice is to really try to find out what you enjoy doing, and to be really bold in going out there and trying to find that for yourself. And in that journey, I think you might come across difficulties or several no's, but I think it's really for you to um, you know build your own path and be really bold when you go out there and ask for what you enjoy doing. Because what I realized is it's a two-way street, right? When you're asking for what you want, there are also people out there who are really looking for the right people to hire. So I think it's a win-win, really, to really put yourself out there and talk to as many people as possible. That's critical in your journey, and to just continue pursuing what you are interested in, and not to be in the box, as you said.
put yourself out there. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing, your journey. It's really inspiring. And for me, it's great that I've been able to be there on part of that journey. And that's all that I ask for as a teacher, is just to witness and be a part of it. So that's been fantastic. So thanks for coming on. And you and I'll talk for a couple of minutes. But do you have any parting words for the audience?
All the best, guys. You got this. Just believe in yourself so
Fantastic.
much.
All right. We'll talk in a couple of minutes. Hold on. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Careers in Finance. And what a great discussion with Annapurna. And I would like to, highlight about putting yourself out there, bringing your energy out there. That's a big lesson that I've learned by observing Annapurna's, life and her progression. Remember, Careers in Finance is brought to you by Valuation Masterclass Bootcamp. Get $100 extra off with these coupon codes: live, student live. Just go to valuationmasterclass.com/bootcamp or scan the QR code. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see you all on the next show.